All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's author chat. My name is Christine Huang. I'm the Blue STEM chair and your host for today. We have an IO representative with us who is helping us with audio and video. So here, I would like to welcome our classroom winners, Miss Lipman and Miss Amends class. Thank you so much for being here. We have a very special guest with us today. It is my pleasure to introduce Marissa Moss, author of Boardwalk Babies. Miss Moss, please tell us a little bit about you.
I've been writing and illustrating books since I was very little. I actually sent my first book to publish when I was 9, but it wasn't very good and they didn't publish it. And I didn't try again until I was a grown up. And then it took me 5 years of sending things to publishers and getting them rejected and revising them and sending them back and getting them rejected before I got my first book. So it took a lot of determination and stubbornness, because if I had given up in year 4 or year 4.5, I wouldn't be doing this. And I feel really lucky to get paid for what I love to do most, which is to tell stories and to draw pictures to go with them. And so books I'm best known for are the Amelia's Notebook series that look like a kid's composition book, and they're based on the notebook I had when I was a kid. And I just wanted to show you just how ugly and messy my first drafts are, because I just you can see how scratchy it is, right? And I scratch things out. I'm not worried about making mistakes. I just want to splat things out on the page. And so it's very splatted. You can't even tell what this is. What is that? And then I just will go back and redraw and revise. I just have stacks of these composition books. And the other kind of books I do, so Amelia is based on me when I was a kid, but books like Boardwalk Babies are the other kind of books I like to do, which are based on actual people, historical events that you should know about, but probably don't. So I thought, when I learned about this story, I thought this was fascinating that a doctor would turn really tiny premature infants into a sideshow. I mean, just to make it into a entertainment spectacle, and did it for the right reasons, because he wanted to save lives. And this was before incubators were being used in hospitals, and he wanted to show the technology. And he did it by creating this kind of spectacle. And the babies, their families paid nothing, and it was just the ticket sales that generated income. And I thought this kind of story I really love to tell. The little piece of history that once you know it, it's like, wow, I'm so glad to find this out, but it's not taught as part of the curriculum. We have a very narrow history that's taught, so we don't know as much as we would like to know. So I love these kind of little historical gems, and I do a lot of this kind of thing about people you should know about, but probably don't. And it's a nice balance, actually, going back and forth between historical research and then my own personal life. When I can widen my world, I can go into my world. And I like having that balance.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll start with our questions and we will rotate classes so that each class will have turns to ask questions. Teachers, if you can have your next student ready so that we can get through as many questions as we can. We'll start off with Miss Lipman's class if you have your question for our author.
Who would like to ask their question first? Brooke, come on down. Come here. Sit in front of the computer. It's okay. Come on. Don't be scared. Sit down. Okay.
I showed you my messy work. Why are you shy? I showed you big mistakes. You don't have to.
Ask your question.
Was you in the incubator when you was a baby?
Oh, see, that's a good question. No, I wasn't. And I have 3 sons, and none of them were in incubators. But I thought it was amazing in this story that the doctor, he ends up marrying one of his nurses, and his own child ends up being an incubator baby. What are the odds of that? And so she spends the first months of her life in the sideshow at Coney Island. And then when she grows up, she becomes a nurse to help out. I love that it was a whole family coming together that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Miss Amends class.
We're having some camera difficulties, but I do have my student here to ask his question. Tell them your name.
My name is Cobain, and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, like I said, I like to write about bits of history that you don't necessarily know about. And this one came out of, I heard a radio program about this, and I thought, like, whoa, I didn't know about this. And then I did this deep dive where I just get as much research as I can. And I'm lucky because I live in Berkeley, California. So I have the university library that I can use. And I'll do a lot of research there. And one of the things I do, especially for books like this, where there isn't a lot of stuff written, is I'll go look at newspaper archives. Because you can read newspaper stories about stuff that's not part of the general history. And then you get a lot of really juicy details. And I just thought that was fascinating. So I just kind of do this big deep dive into as much research as I possibly can do, getting me into the period. It's kind of like time travel. Doing research like this is as close as I can come to time travel. I love it.
All right, thank you. Miss Lippman's class.
Renanje? Okay, here's Renanje.
What inspired you to be an author?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Well, I would say it's because I felt like stories were incredibly powerful. Like I was a skinny kid that wasn't very healthy. I had asthma, still have asthma, and I just felt like nothing was in my control. But the stories that I made up were completely in my control. I could make whatever I wanted to have happen in a story. I thought it was really powerful magic. And I have three brothers and sisters, and I would tell them stories about characters that were very loosely based on them. And if I was mad at them, I'd make something horrible happen to their character. And if I was happy with them, I'd make something great happen to their character. And just seeing their reactions made me see, wow, I have a lot of power with my stories that I didn't have in real life. I thought it was incredible. And that's why as soon as I could write and draw, I just kept it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Evans' class.
Your name.
My name is Hunter. When you were doing the research, did you meet any of the babies?
No, I didn't meet any of the babies, although there are, I mean, the babies from when he was doing his work would be extremely, extremely old now. They would be their children and their grandchildren. But normally, I have to say, when I do research, I try to meet as many people who knew that person. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. So for example, Barbed Wire Baseball, which is a book I did about the man who got the internees in Japanese internment camps to play baseball. I knew they played baseball, but I didn't know who started that. So I started doing the research to find that out. And Kenichi Zenemura was dead, but he had two teenage sons, one of whom was left alive, and I could talk to him, Howard Zenemura. He's recently died. But getting as close as you can to the actual person is really the best thing you can do. And so a book I'm working on now, that's exactly what I've done. The woman I'm writing about, she's long dead, but I'm talking to her children and grandchildren. So you do what you can to get those stories directly from them.
All right, Miss Lippman's class.
Crystal, come here. Sorry, we should have been ready. Come on, Crystal.
It's okay.
My fault. Okay, this is Crystal. Go ahead.
What inspired you to make this book?
Renanje just asked that.
Oh.
Here, why don't you ask this?
What are you working on next?
What am I working on next? Okay, that is a really good question. So I'm actually working on three different things.
Ooh.
And the reason why I'm working on three different things is, do any of you guys ever get like writer's block or you get stuck? Probably do. So sometimes I get stuck. So what I do is then I'll put it down, whatever I'm working on, and I'll go work on this other project. And then when I come back, I'm fresh and then I'm not stuck anymore. So one of the things I'm working on is I ghost wrote a picture book last year, and I'd never been a ghostwriter before. And a ghost writer for a picture book seems really strange, but I ghost wrote it for Mia Armstrong, who's a girl with Down syndrome, who's become a big spokesperson for disability rights movement. And so I met her and I talked with her and I tried to capture as much of her personality and her real life experience in this picture book. And we had such a great time together that Mia is now in middle school and she wanted to do a middle school graphic novel murder mystery. So I said, okay, we will do a middle school graphic novel mystery, but it won't be a murder mystery because we can't have any teachers being murdered. And she wanted to be the murderer. And I said, no, you're not going to be the murderer. You will be the detective who solves the case. So that's what we're working on together. I'm writing and drawing it, but I'm using as much of her sense of humor and personality, and it's based on her experience in middle school. And it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy working with her. And this is not something I've ever done before. This kind of close collaboration is new to me. And it's it's fun to work with a kid writer who's got a real sense of what she wants to say. I'm just having a blast.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Immense class.
My name's Brooklyn, and what do you do in your free time?
What do I do in my free time? Okay, well, the first thing I do every morning is I go swimming. Well, not every morning, but most mornings. I swim most mornings. And the reason why I love to swim is you just kind of detach your brain from your body. So if there's something that I'm stuck on, I won't think about it like hunched over my desk. But when I'm swimming, sometimes the answer just bubbles up. And I keep in my swim jacket a pad of paper and a pen, because when you get an idea, sometimes like you get an idea in the middle of the night, you think you're going to remember it, but you never do. So I have that also by my bed. So if I get an idea, I jump out of the pool and I'll write it down. And if I get an idea in the middle of the night, I write it down. So I start my day by swimming so that it's easier for me to sit, because it's hard to, you guys get fidgety. Who wants to sit all day? Then I can sit in the morning is when I do my creative work. I write or illustrate. And then in the afternoon, I'll do more like revisions or editorial work. Because the other thing I do, my other day job is I started a small children's book press because when I started out doing children's books, there were dozens of publishers, but now there's 3. And it makes for every book being the same. And I wanted there to be more diversity. Like when Amelia's Notebook came out, I sent that to all the big publishers and nobody would take it. I sent it to a small publisher, Tricycle Press, and they took a chance on it. So I think we need a diversity of publishers to get different points of view out. So I started this press, and then I'm working on those books. A lot of them are by debut authors or authors that can't get read by the big publishers. So I'm trying to give back to the profession that's given me so much, basically.
Excellent question, Miss Lippman's class.
Okay, we have Jasmine here.
What is your favorite book that you have written?
That's like asking a parent who's your favorite child. But you know what? Here's the answer. The answer is always the one I'm working on right now. Because you know how when you're working on something, you really get into it and you really love it. And then when you finish it, there's always a kind of sense of letdown, like, that's not as good as I wanted it to be. And then when I get the book, because once I finish the book and I send it to my editor, it's a whole year before the finished book comes out. It's like a super long pregnancy. And you finally get the book and I'll read it and I'll think, wow, that's pretty good. So it's a lot of kind of delayed gratification. Like, man, that book looks pretty good. Yeah, publishing there's a very long lead time. It's kind of crazy like the book that I have a book coming out in December. That's a graphic novel that I finished 2 years ago. I don't know why that one's taking so long. I have no idea.
Thank you.
You have to be super patient.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Miss Immense class.
Go ahead.
My name is Raiden, and what is your favorite thing you learned while writing this book?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. What's the favorite thing I learned? Well, I was delighted to learn that Dr. Cooney's daughter was a premature child herself. I thought that's something like it's so perfect, and that it happened in real life. It's like you would make that up in a story, but it actually happened. I love that. And I just love the humor of it, that you could have premature babies, which is kind of a serious thing, next to the sword swallower and the bearded lady and the cotton candy machine and the tilt-a-whirl. I like that disjuncture. I thought that was hilarious. I mean, I like things that are kind of crazy and funny that way.
Thank you for your question. Miss Lippman's class.
Good question.
Okay, we have Benjamin here.
Hi, what steps did you take to make the books?
What stuff do I take to make the books? Oh, that's a good question. I do all my work by hand, because I feel like there's a brain-hand connection, and I think better writing longhand. And I want to sometimes draw in the middle of something, so I don't draw on the computer. I know people do, but to me, that's like drawing with a potato. I just feel like there's no control over that. I want the bite of the pen in the paper. And I don't use pencil. I use pen because I want it to be dark. And if I make mistakes, I just scratch it out. I don't care, because I want to really be able to see what I'm doing. And it's for the art, for the books when I do the art. Well, like this is a book I'm doing art on now. I'll show you. I'll do the sketches on tracing paper like this. I don't know if you can even see it, but you can see it's kind of see-through paper. And then I have a light table. So hard to describe, but it's a box that has light come through. So I put this on the light table. I put watercolor paper on top, and then I can see the lines, and then I can draw the lines on the watercolor paper, and then I paint. So like for Amelia's notebook, my process was the first thing I had to do was like, look at Amelia's notebook looks like a kid's notebook, right?
Yeah.
So it's with watercolor paper, but it's got notebook lines. And do you think you can buy notebook paper with notebook line? I mean, watercolor paper with notebook lines?
No.
No, because nobody does that but me. So the first thing I would do is spend a week just drawing notebook lines using a ruler and a blue pencil and a pink pencil for the, the one in the margin. And then I could paint it. And then I do the text. Like Amelia's notebook, this is my handwriting. This is not a font. It's not typeset. I wrote it. And I do it on an overlay because the book gets translated. Like Amelia's been translated into Chinese and Japanese and Korean and French and Dutch. So you don't want the text to be on the art. You want it to be a separate layer. And that's how people now doing digital art, that's what they do. They have what they call layers, so they can peel it off, the translation. But I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. That's how I started. So I guess it sounds like a laborious process, but it's also a lot of fun. It's hard work, but fun work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the men's class?
Loud.
I'm Isaiah, and my question is, did anyone help you with the book?
Oh, did anyone help me with the book? Well, I'd say the illustrator who did a phenomenal job helped me because she just captured the period. She did her research. Illustrators also have to do research because they have to know what people dressed like. What did Coney Island look like at the time? What did the incubator look like? So she did a lot of work, and I thought she did a great job. But the other person who helps me with when I do these kind of books is librarians. Librarians at the university library help me a lot because a lot of the material that I'm looking for, if it's an original document, it's not easy to find because it's cataloged by the person who donated it. So you need a librarian to tell you where to find things. And that way you can get the photographs that you want. So librarians are my best friend. They help a lot.
All right, thank you for your question. Miss Lipman's class.
Okay, we have Camilla.
Are you an illustrator too?
I am an illustrator. Yeah. So I illustrate some of my things and some of my things I don't. And it depends. Like sometimes my editor wants me to illustrate it and sometimes they feel like my style isn't right for the book. And I've been lucky. I've gotten phenomenal illustrators. I really have illustrators I very much admire. And they bring stuff to the books that I wouldn't think of because that's the illustrator's job. They're supposed to imagine the book in a different way and bring a visual sense to it. And because I am an illustrator myself, when I'm writing, I'm thinking in terms of pictures. So I hope that makes the job easier for the illustrator, that they can see the potential, the illustrator, the pictorial potential. It's not just a big bunch of something that you can't make an image of. You have to think of a picture, right? Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Miss Amen's class.
My name is Carly, and my question is, what is the book that took you the longest to write?
Oh, well, you will be dismayed. It took me 10 years. Okay. And that's because, and this is a complicated story because it's a graphic novel. It's my only adult graphic novel, and it's a memoir, and it's called Last Things. And the reason why it took me 10 years is because it's a difficult, sad story. Like I said, I have 3 sons, and when my sons were little, my husband got ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a really horrible neurological disease, and he died actually pretty quickly, within 7 months. And I started writing that story pretty soon after he died because I was just trying to make sense of what happened to us as a family. And it took me 10 years of revising it until I realized it wasn't working as just text. It needed to be a graphic novel. I had to have art there to make the story more accessible and not so sad. I mean, the art lightens the story. So once I turned it into a graphic novel, then it was much quicker. But so part of it was finding the format, finding the voice, and finding the way to streamline the story. But that's the longest. I mean, and there's another book where I didn't work on it 10 years, but it took me 10 years to get it published because publishing just wasn't ready for the book. And that was a book about Maggie G, who was a woman who flew planes during World War II. And I sent it to publishers, and they said, who cares about women and who cares about Asian Americans? And I said, okay, well, I do, but all right, I'll just wait. And then I waited and waited and waited until publishing got smart and started to care about those things. And I sent that book out again. And it finally came out 10 years after I'd first written it. But it was actually very good timing because it was also when the WASP, the Women's Army Service Pilots, finally got the Congressional Medal of Honor. So Maggie G and I went to DC together for her to get the honor and signed the book at the Smithsonian. So sometimes it's good that things take longer. Like I said, you have to be determined and patient, both.
Wonderful question. We have time for one more question from each class. So Miss Lippman's class, your last question.
Okay, we have Ronnie here.
Are any of your siblings in the books?
Are any of my siblings in the books? Yes. If you read Amelia's Notebook, Cleo is very much based on my older sister, and that's why she hates the books. But I tell her, write your own books if you don't like it. Sorry.
Thank you.
He who tells the story has the power. The
You're
power.
right. I think that's fair.
And Miss Amen's class, your last question.
My name is Cohen. How long does it usually take you to write a book?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say normally, if I had to do a lot of research, I'd say a year. If I don't have to do a lot of research, and also this is write, not illustrate, right? Just doing the writing. If I'm just writing, it could be 3 to 6 months, depending. And in fact, I just did 2 books for Dorling Kindersley. They wanted 2 historical books, and they gave me 2 weeks for each book. And I made that deadline. I mean, I really had to work very long hours, but they were subjects that I'd already done the research for, so it was possible. But that was way too fast.
All right. Thank you so much for your questions. That's all the time that we have today. I want to thank Marissa Moss for taking the time to talk to our readers. And thank you all for your wonderful questions.
Really good
Teachers, if
question.
you'd like to unmute so your students can
Okay, say thank you. Yeah, you can all come in the middle and say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so